I'm hidden, that's alright, I'm like, oh no.
It's like level 4 of a site they're trying to clean. Is there any room?
Sit on the floor?
Yeah.
Or cushions or...
You need a bigger room.
I don't mind. Anyone who doesn't just suffer from anything to sit on the floor.
All of them. I want to be young, I want to be young. Wouldn't that go good?
Someone can sit there.
Nobody wants your chair.
Hang on, let's come to
They're leaving already. Okay, I just want to inquire because I did bring my own laptop to use, which is not particularly good, but this one is not mine and I'm not very good with technology, so if anything goes wrong, is there anyone who's good at technical stuff in the room? Just to find out who you might be. Let us know. Surely, there's got to be somebody. Oh, well, hopefully it will all be okay. We have to assume it will be. I'll make a start. And those of you that are sitting on the floor, if you need to get up and move around a little bit, you can. Okay, because there is one chair here, so if you need to release. I just put that up because I realised I hadn't put it on anything. I think I probably even did it up wrong. Is anybody else just arriving? He said, oh, there's one chair here if you want to. Oh, there's one now. There's a
couple over on this side.
Oh, there's a chair over here. Anyone who would like to sit there?
chair over there.
Aha, they're attractive, you see. Those of you on the periphery can do the moving around thing. This is really scary because there's a camera up there and it seems to be, I'm hoping it's pointing towards there and not pointing towards there. Because otherwise, if you see me sort of going or ripping out and changing my outfit halfway and appearing as somebody else. Right, so my name is Jackie Gilbington. This is about intervention. I have to say that this is actually not the right one because I suddenly thought to myself, oh, Lightly Does It should be in really thin, wispy writing, and I must put it on something else because it's not here. But the idea of saying Lightly Does It because, I'm hoping that by the end of the session, intervention is going to fade it away a little bit. Little tiny bit. I want you to intervene as we go along. Can I just ask though, if you ask questions or if you've got something to say, can nobody dominate other than me? I am not necessarily the greatest expert on intervention. Some of you may well be much more expert than I am. I'm very happy for that. And if you want to share what you know and what you think, that is wonderful. As long as you don't behave as if you know better than anybody else in the room, which I certainly don't. Okay. And so, questions as we go along, but questions may be after I've said my little spiel, sort of on each one of the slides on here. I was going to start. Has anyone got a question? I was going to start by just talking. Or telling a little story which doesn't actually put me in a very good light. This is the only picture that I could find of a child in the San Jose that wasn't a really, really small child. And it's downloaded from Beamer's time just in case anybody in the room who recognises it and says, hang on a minute, where did that image come from? Have you got permission to use it? And I've used this one, and actually my story is about a little boy who took all his clothes off in the sand cave. So a long time ago, one seat here, and you can, or you can just sit on the floor, or I suppose I could give sister. I wouldn't mind anyone doing it because they could suddenly take over. Well, I can't change my outfit. You're right. Okay. Yeah, a long time ago, because I'm getting on a bit now, I was asked to run an after-school club. Something I'd never done before and I didn't know anything about. And it was in I don't think they call them Nissen huts, but in schools that get bigger than they're supposed to get, and they have huts that suddenly grow up there. So I was given to run this thing, a hut that was used as a music room and a kind of overflow and various things of that kind. And it wasn't terribly well resourced. I tried to resource it with all sorts of interesting things, but lots of sort of regulations, rules and regulations came in, and all the bits of material and cardboard boxes were thrown away, and things of that kind. However, they had a nursery, and the nursery was refurbishing itself, and they've got a great big sand tray. It was sort of quite sizable like this, but up on legs. And I thought, oh well, I'll have that. I'll put it in, perhaps something, because they were throwing it out. And where I put it was in a window, by the window, I mean, and that was the driveway into the school. And I had loads of children, and it was all fine. And there was a little boy who was a bit troubled, and he was a bit troublesome, and he loved it. I'd only had it in there for about 4 or 5 days or so. And he used to take his little cars. I can't remember if he was 5 or 6. And he used to like playing in the sand, and in this sand tray, and that was great. And then there was something else on in the school at the same time, I don't know, a basketball club or something like that. And it was sort of getting near to the time when those parents would be arriving. Anyway, I'd been doing something else, and suddenly I looked, and the little boy had taken all his clothes off, and he sat in the sand, and he was throwing sand all over himself, having a most fantastic time. And this is the thing that didn't put me in a very good light, because instead of doing what Bob Hughes would say, decentering and thinking about what my feelings were before I thought about how to intervene, I panicked, and I thought, he gods, the parents come to pick their kids up, they can see he's in the window, he's got no clothes on, he's throwing sand all over himself, having a wonderful time. What am I going to do? They're going to say something about this, this is not going to look good for me, because I'm supposed to be in charge, and usually in after-school clubs I'm sure that children don't wander around naked or aren't playing without their clothes on, so I did what any good play worker would do. I bribed him to put his clothes on. He was a particular toy that he liked, and I said, your mum's going to be here for you soon, and if you put your clothes on quickly, you can have this toy to take home. And it's not good, but it was a very massive intervention, a totally uncalled for one. It wasn't helping him to play, it wasn't anything to do with him whatsoever, because he was having a fantastic time and play was doing what it was supposed to do for him. And I just intervened because I panicked. I don't think anyone would have done anything different. Anyone just left him there?
I think probably, just from you saying how the parents would view it, that's one thing that I find influences, say, me and my staff, if you like, is if the parent view it in a certain way, you tend to think, well, I don't want the parent to view it like that, and you forget about the play of the child.
It was my little intervention story that puts me in a very bad light right from the broadcast. Just to make you all feel relaxed in order to tell any dreadful stories that you've Okay. I thought I'd just start by saying what intervention actually means, to look at the dictionary definition of it. It's control a situation, interfere, interrupt, butt in, intrude, arbitrate slightly, nicer, mediate, diagnose that or step in, and I put or not, because in play work quite a lot of intervention is not intervention, it's called intervention, but actually what you're encouraged to do or to not do is to not do anything, other than internally thinking about it. Okay. And I think it's just interesting because I don't know, there's been some programs on television, or I don't know if anyone works in the therapeutic, anyone work in the therapeutic world? No? Okay. Because there's a big thing just called intervention. There have been some programs on TV about intervention, which is sort of working with an addict or an alcoholic or somebody with their family, doing what's a massive intervention, trying to sort of get a whole family, a whole group thing to, to try and help them to give up, I suppose you could say. And when I first started in play, which is a long time ago, the word intervention wasn't used at all. So it's sort of come in the last, well actually, I've got some dates down here, I can't remember exactly when, but let's say 20 years. It's a sort of relatively new one, and it's, I think it's been sort of stolen from the therapeutic world, and it sort of gives a certain gravitas, the whole business of you involving yourself in something to do with children's play. Because if you say something like, that I'm in control here, doesn't sound too good, but if you can put it somewhere on some sort of spectrum or give it a name, or it sounds better. I don't know if anyone, I'm assuming that everybody, because I think this was called Moving On, does everyone has already known before they come here about what they think intervention is? Is there anyone who didn't? Or doesn't? No? Okay. So there's no doubt about the fact that children do not need either play work or play workers to play. You are not needed, I am not needed, we are not needed. Children are going to play regardless of whatever we provide for them. Whatever we do, if they've got free time, or indeed if they haven't got free time, they're going to play, and they're not necessarily going to be seen to be playing, but, and I don't know whether that's always a good feeling, and particularly in these times when money's being cut and lots of our jobs are possibly, when I say our, I don't mean me, because I'm sort of retired, but I mean lots of your jobs are possibly under threat. Saying you're not needed is not necessarily the best thing to say. So if anyone wants to challenge me, don't just sit there listening to me being rude to you. Yeah, we can. It's dirty. Well, hang on a minute. To the cameras, I think. Okay. And I thought before we actually think about intervening, or before I talk about intervening in play, it's important to establish what you think of as play, because obviously, depending upon how you feel about play as a thing, it's going to make a difference to how you're likely to intervene into it, into the setting, what you think you can do. I put things down that I actually got from one of Wendy Russel's papers on triangulation, I think it was, or it was a sort of very deep and thoughtful piece, but somebody called Bizel had actually written down these as possible things that play is, and then I added feeling afterwards, because I thought that was missing, and there might be some other things. So these are, other than saying what people might do, but what you think of as being play, because obviously it's going to make a difference. If you think of play as being an activity or a behaviour, it's something you can see, and therefore there's something that in relation to intervention, you can tell whether your intervention, either what you provided in the first place, or how you behave when children are there playing, or whether you actually interact with them, you can see whether it's having an effect or not. But if you see it as being, for instance, an inclination, if play is an inclination, a disposition, it's something that you can't necessarily see. So a child might be actively involved in doing something that looks like play. However, if their inclination is not towards play, they're just doing it to please you, because they think, oh, they've spent ages going and collecting all those old logs, I better look as if I'm enjoying myself, right? Unlikely, but the thing is, your intervention is, how do you know? How do you know what to do and what not to do? And if play is a feeling, so it does make a difference as to how you might intervene. Okay. And then to go on from the sort of what is play. And I put up there because I thought, well, I haven't put down what is kind of agreed. I haven't written it in the very precise words of the playwork principles, but freely chosen, intrinsically motivated, personally directed behaviour that's under the control of the child. So that also is another thing about play. And then you need to think about, before you can think about intervening, you also need to think about well, why do children play anyway? What is the point of it? Or is there any point to it? These are some of the things that some of the theorists think about it. I don't know if anyone's got any other thoughts about why children play. It's natural, yeah. That would be to respond to a primal drive, I suppose, to sort of, that it seems as if, well, I think everybody does it. I think we think that all children play, don't we? On some level, but sometimes you can't tell. So I don't know if any of you have sort of read any of Fraser Brown's stuff about children in the Romanian orphanages, or if any of you have worked with children who've been in situations where play is unlikely. One of the things about that is you can't tell if their situation has not been. If you've been tied in a cot, and maybe you've been lying down a lot of the time, and there isn't anything particularly to play with. Can we tell whether those children have been playing inside their heads? Whether it's happening without us knowing. It's just that the action is not taking place. It's kind of interesting because, if it's a primal drive, you would think a bit like breathing. It must be occurring at some level, even if it's not visible. And again, depending upon why you think children play, it's going to make a difference to how you're likely to intervene. Or it should make a difference to how you're likely to intervene, really and truly. Because if you think it's connected in some way with a child's development, and that you're therefore going to see it as being something that's sort of incredibly essential. If you think it's just about feeling good, let's say, then your interventions might be much more about just providing for children to have fun than thinking about, well, what exactly do they need. Any other ideas about why children play?
Well, surely for me it's also about the stimulus, that their own experiences and the stimulus at the beginning of their lives as well. So like you say, the children have been restricted to a cot. They're not going to have anything to explore, so therefore they are going to probably be more sedate as it were, yeah? And one of my examples is the two children who come from a rural country, and they actually didn't engage in any of the play or the toys at the very beginning when they came to our sessions. In fact, the older brother, his role was to defend and look after the younger sibling, yeah? And that actually took time for him to realise he could touch and play and relax a bit. So So that was his experience. So for me, that's where it comes from as well, is what has been an experience and a stimulus when you've been
The
younger.
environment. Yes. So okay. So what is around a child? The more that they can see, the more that they can touch, the more that they can feel, the more that they can experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't they also like pushing social boundaries as well, you know, in their play, finding out what's acceptable by the group, you know, so they might push it beyond what the, you know, so in a way that, you know, they're learning social, a bit, you know, social attitudes.
So the group's important.
Yeah.
So actually having other children around them is important. I think both of those are true. I do think both of those are true. But I just wonder whether it's a bit like the Chinese women that used to have their feet bound when they were small, and their feet were bound, and they found ways of sort of hobbling about in a restricted kind of way. And then if their feet were unbound, some of them couldn't walk at all, but some of them actually learned to walk a little bit. We are what we experience, aren't we? And then the other thing I think to think about, so before you can think about intervening, you have to think about, well, what do you think play is, right? Because what's going to be your point in intervening anyway, and why do children need to play? And then also how you think about children, what you perceive children to be like. Whether you see them as being these sort of poor, needy creatures who actually need us in order to be able to play, or are some of them needy and some of them not? Do you have any kind of stereotypes about children at all? About expectations of what you expect them to be? It's interesting, the whole thing about pointing at this, and you can't see me, the whole thing about the whole thing about a playwork child. I mean, certainly in most playwork training that I've either been to or things that I've read about, there is kind of a stereotype playwork child. They nearly always really want to play in the outdoors, and they nearly always want to take risks, be involved in risky play, and they nearly always want to be quite sort of rebellious and not part of the norm. They're never sort of girly and want to play with Barbies, and they're never sort of boily and want to sort of be hugely aggressive. There's a kind of, I don't know whether you think there's a stereotype playwork child, but I think sometimes we stereotype children just in the same way as, you know, if you talk about someone as a yob, and then you've got them bound to rights, haven't you? They're going to be difficult. You know, they're not going to be an easy child, young person to work with. And if they're little, they're likely to be a little more needy than they are if they're a bit older. And I think that sometimes also affects your intervention. The way that you're going to intervene is going to be, and obviously, you may think of them as being just the same as adults, but different with not adults in waiting. And in which case, you might think, well, they'll know what they want in their environment and what they want by way of intervention, rather than me thinking that I know what they need and what they want and what I should do. So they will tell me, which I think is one of the things that playworkers sometimes think they're very expert in knowing what children want. You're all being very quiet listening to you. I'm expecting you to say, no.
Wait till we've had a coffee.
Your stereotype idea.
Yeah.
But I think, if we're honest, a lot of the playwork settings are so geared up that way, is that they are all outside, so they are going to attract children that like being outside, and quite often they are quite challenging places, so they're going to attract children that are. And I think when we soften them, when we put all the dressing up stuff there, it's not that our children don't want to do it, because they will do it. And if we do have the gentle stuff in the little den, you know, children do still play house and do those little things as well. And it's about, if we're being honest, to make sure that our settings can allow for all that sort of to happen, because those children do still exist. It's not like all the children only want to do the den building and the climbing and swinging on trees. And actually, most children will like to dip into lots of different things, and it's not that you've always got the same children that want to do one thing. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Thank you. Thank you for that. No, I mean, you're absolutely right, but what you've actually now spoken about is you're talking about your intervention, so it depends on what you put in the setting as to what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is how you intervene in the first place as to what the children are going to do.
You can try putting nothing there and see what happens.
Well, interestingly, just before we go on, this comes from Harry Shire, actually came from Wendy Russel, which I just happened to have read recently, so I was using some of her stuff. I did write down what it was. Pyramid play work towards not taking play seriously. It's far too important for that. I don't know if anyone went to her presentation on that. Okay. But she quoted from Harry Shire and said that adults never have to make children play. They never have to make. You cannot make a child play. It's impossible. You can make a child do something that might look as if they're playing, but you can't know whether they're playing or not just because they happen to be actively involved in something that looks like play, because unless you believe that play is just an activity. Okay. And he suggests that only rarely do they have to help children to play. You have actually quoted some examples maybe of where they have had to. And what he suggests is that adults have to let children play, to just to play.
It's interesting though, sometimes what like a good intervention as far as I'm concerned is if children are playing and there's something in that toy cover that will make it an additional thing to their play to expand it, if you like, is to just pull it out without them knowing and put it somewhere and let them then find it, because it's hidden, and then you've interfered in the play because you put your standard to it to say, right, I'll bring an extra ball out or something so they can play with it, like Skittles or something like that, but with Skittles down so they can have a couple of games going on.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because then if you sort of think about the I'll just go back. Oh yeah, here. If you think about, obviously if you're doing that, you must think that the child for some reason needs that extra ball in order for them to be able to play well. You have to presume, if you're going to do something extra, that what you're going to do, you must presume that the outcome is going to be better for them, if you want to call it that, than it would be if you didn't intervene. Yes, which means that not getting at you, but you're still looking at yourself as the expert, the person not equal to adults but different. Because I just sort of wonder how many of you, when you go out, let's just sort of say you go out to a pub. I always say a pub. I always say this. When you go out to a pub and you're sort of sat at a table and there's some people sitting on the next table, and they're having a drink, and you hear them, I don't know, having a discussion about something, right? How many of you sort of lean over and say, have you thought about, and then put your point of view, because you think I can make that discussion better, by me involving myself in this, they're going to have a much better evening.
Well, let me put it another way.
No, don't put it another way.
All right.
Right. In a minute. So, are children experts in their own play? Right. That's what I want to know. Where do we get the idea that from our participation in intervention in play can in some way improve upon it? I mean, do we really believe that we can make children's experiences better in some way, shape or form? And I love this picture. I just thought, how could we improve on this? Give a group of children a tree and hang there. I mean, isn't that wonderfully pointless? Just hanging, and I don't know how many of you, I can remember hanging upside down on a tree. You just would hang on a branch on a tree. They was practicing whether your legs would actually grip. I mean, what we could give all sorts of points to this, couldn't we? We could say what was happening, what was developing whilst they were doing it. Whether they did it for the photograph, I was trying to find pictures that didn't look, because most of the times when you go onto Google and look for children playing, they're all sort of, you know, posed there, doing play things. So I wondered, you know, could we improve on that? This picture I actually took myself, and it was at a port, and there were these kids playing on some very dangerous. It was really steep, and I was just thinking they were dangerous, health and safety wise. It was definitely dangerous. They were quite small, and they were having a fantastic time. They were all sort of either scrabbling up to the top or they're jumping. It was quite a long way, about 10 foot down onto the ground underneath. And there wasn't anybody around, there were no adults around, they were just doing it. And I was wondering whether we could improve on that. I don't know if you think we could. Would you put anything there? Well, actually, let me go back. Would you do anything? Would you intervene at all in that? Anybody?
With my deputies, I'd have to.
Yeah.
Underneath them. God forbid that anybody would break anything. Yeah?
Well, we allow children to climb trees at our place, and we've had complaints off the neighbours saying they're looking into the gardens. Unbelievable.
Give the binoculars.
Yeah.
See, I'm not sure. I don't think I could improve on that, because that just brings back a kind of memory to me. I have no idea whether, I don't think I could improve on that. What about that? Do you think you could improve on that? You know, obviously she's got that pink netting from somewhere. And is it, I don't know if it's a crown or whatever, I don't know if you could improve on that.
Well, she seems very happy.
Yeah, and whether she'd be doing, you know, I just wonder whether she'd be around with her arms up a sort of jumper or something doing that, or whether the pink netting has suggested something to her, and if so, whether that was provided by an intervention, or whether it just happened to be knocking around, you know, Mum was making something, or Dad, or whoever. I don't know. It's kind of interesting thought. What I love about all three of these things I've chosen, obviously I've chosen, and what I love particularly about them is that they all look totally pointless. I mean, who goes running around like this? Well, you know, it's inside her head, isn't it? It's not anything that we could possibly know that she's thinking about. I mean, is she Superwoman? Who knows? And then I kind of thought, well, improve on this is they're not such good pictures, but and I don't know whether the children have done this themselves or whether somebody has provided for this. But a big cardboard box or a load of sheets hung over something, which is, you know, is virtually no drop. It is something. It is an intervention, but it's not enormous. And I just think, well, could you improve on this? Would you have different coloured sheets? Or would you put some paint by the box in order for the children to paint the box? Or would that necessarily improve their play? Or would it just make you as a play worker think, I've done something, I've intervened in some way, I've given them the opportunity to progress their play somewhere?
It's interesting because that picture there with the den and the sheets is something that I know this girl does that all the time at our setting, and we get tears and all sorts from it because she won't allow children in sometimes, and then, you know, next thing you know, they've destroyed it, and so, you know, and we tend to let it go so far, but then, you know, Wendy interfere, Wendy, you're not interfere, that's a call that you have to make.
You're using the interfere, aren't you, rather than the intervene. Remember, intervene.
All right, intervene.
Good word. Good word, makes you feel professional. You're actually doing a real job for a real reason. Interfere is, you know, sort of stop that.
Yeah. Well, intervene then.
Isn't there that improve isn't the right word? Isn't it about giving the children options? I think to kind of suggest that if we've got something else in the environment, they're then going to use that. That's perceiving the play worker as the expert. But if that is left in the environment for them, is it not to do them a discredit to say, therefore they're going to use it? Is it not about giving them that option? Is that not a different sort of thing?
Yeah, remember, I'm not the expert on this. I'm just provoking you.
I agree.
I'm just trying to make you think about it. Okay. Yeah, but yes, I mean, I would agree with you. But if you sort of, I agree, but I do agree, but I don't agree. I do agree, but I don't agree, because I think that, you know, if you think of a play as being something, and I don't know how many of you believe it's sort of evolutionary, that it stayed within us because it's important for us, and that because it's evolutionary, it has evolved as time goes on, and you know, prior to there ever being any play workers, there was nobody who was giving them any options. It was just when I say they, I mean me and you. It was, you know, if we'd have been children in days of yore, and I'm talking about days of yore, I'm talking about days of yore, days of yore, days of yore, and play has sort of evolved, but one of the things that happened is that as play has evolved, adults and society have evolved as well, and now one of the things that seems to happen is that we as play workers, but not just us as play workers, all sorts of people intervene in relation to play, not necessarily in the same way as play workers do, but play gets used by adults for all sorts of social reasons. Okay. So play workers intervention. So I think it was Mick Conway who first suggested. Actually, no, prior to that, that was in 2003. Pat Petrie, have you heard of Pat Petrie? Yeah, from Children's Services to Children's Spaces, suggests that play work provision was a bit of social engineering of children's lives, the way to give the modern nation state's competitive edge in the global rat race. It's a sort of suggestion that because we have decided that children need particular places to play, possibly trying to allow them to play in the way that they used to before there was the modern world, that actually we're trying to in some way engineer them through their play. And then Mick Conway says, see play workers having become necessary because high levels of intervention in children's lives in three main areas: lots of space for children to play, so there's not as much space, attempting to make up for the loss of play space by providing designated compensatory play spaces, and some of them with play workers to facilitate children's play in a safe and supervised setting. So if you're in a safe and supervised setting, you're intervening more than you would be if you're not a safe and supervised. So if you just provided something and then kept out of the way, it wouldn't be supervised and it probably wouldn't be safe. And then directed and channeling play provision, and indeed children's play itself, to help produce either educational, and I'm sure not all of you do that, social and ultimately economic outcomes in the wide interest of a complex, fast-moving society. So, play work provision has been seen as part of social engineering sometimes, as a definite intervention into children's lives, that if it wasn't there, children would still potentially play, they would just play differently. They might play out with the traffic. But I wonder whether that would be part of evolution.
Do you not think that kids play part of evolution, like say 30, 40 years ago, kids were making stuff, building stuff, because that's like the era of people like building stuff. nowadays a lot of kids play on computers, and a lot of people see it as negative computers, but really, in 20, 30 years' time, they're going to need it more, and times changes with what they're playing with, is how they're going to be able to adapt later in adult life sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I see what you're saying, yeah. So rather than playing with the plastic, evolutionarily speaking, children are playing with technology because that's with computers and social, social...
and they're going to need it, need to come, otherwise they're going to get behind.
And I wonder how many playwork settings sort of think, oh, we'll provide everybody with a mobile phone, rather than spending money on any other kind of one that's 4G and really fast, and they can play every kind of game they want to. Different kind of intervention, which you might think of as being for a different kind of child. I didn't put, actually, when putting out different kinds of children, whether there was the technical child, who is not well thought of, actually. A child that sits indoors, I mean, there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot about children sitting indoors playing on computers that has very bad press, because the body's not doing well, and therefore, what playwork doesn't go along with. I don't know, does anyone run a play setting that is just set up with technical things?
Have access to a computer room which we didn't particularly use. And then sometimes there's particular children that we like to give them 20 minutes there to actually chill because they get over anxious, and it helps to focus them and then find them. Barring that.
No. I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Because we therefore are making choices. We are saying we know what is and isn't, which means that we must have listened to what other people in different areas of work with children are saying. So it's not just our own playwork ideas. I wonder how many of you in your own lives go on the internet a lot, or when you're away from the children, play computer games and, and mess about your phone and use social media and all that kind of stuff, but when you're with the children, sort of don't provide for it.
But doesn't it go back to the compensatory bit? Because I know lots of children we work with play computer games a lot. They've all have got phones. They all are online all of the time, even when they're at the playground. But it's sort of like what is on offer at the play settings is stuff they have to work quite hard to find. And actually they're doing all that technical and logical stuff anyway, and it does sort of cross over and interact with what goes on at the playground. But it's sort of what happens in the play setting is more than what they've just bumped into by chance.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, it is the compensatory thing. You're right, I'm provoking. But I kind of wonder that again, because it's play comes from the past with us as people, sort of as orangutans or whatever we were, and it's always sort of gone through the eras. It's not always had anybody who's been prepared to compensate for the fact that the environment isn't necessarily that which is going to give them the best opportunities. It's always, until fairly recent and modern times, I don't know, I mean, I think kids have had things like hoops for quite a long time, and maybe the odd rag doll and things, but I mean, the outside has always been there, and the trees and bushes and leaves and grass and, sort of seaside and things, that's always been there. Not always all the time, sometimes just as sort of, but otherwise players sort of marched through time, if you see what I mean, it's kind of marched through time, and now and I'm saying play workers, but it's not just play workers, but play work has a particular kind of intervention, as opposed to education has a particular kind of intervention into play, and health has a particular kind of intervention in play, to children playing. I don't know, I'm using the wrong grammar, I think, but so there are lots of them. Play work is just sort of one of them. And I know that our notion is that sort of high response, low intervention, So it's sort of responding to what the children appear to want to do, to play with, to have, and really trying to intervene as lightly as possible to keep off as much as possible. Except I wonder whether we intervene a lot more than we think we do. I'm hoping you're thinking about whether you're intervening. The trouble is, if you come with the mindset that no, our intervention is perfect, then, which is why I started off with a story about my most dreadful, possibly not my worst one ever, but a really bad intervention, because I think that sometimes, because we are so ethically driven as play workers, sometimes we can't actually see what we're doing, because we feel that we have the right approach to children, that we are the people who understand them. We are the most child-friendly profession, I don't know if you call it a profession, in the entire universe. And so sometimes I think that even when we reflect, it sort of sometimes reflects more about patting ourselves on the back and saying we're doing well.
A lot of our interventions about interventions with adults. Certainly I would say that most of the main interventions we can do are with the adults, with the parents, and with teachers and other professionals who me, and they have more of a response. So some of my most uncomfortable moments with children have been quickly to nip in and catch the other adults. There's kids, briefly say, they were doing a funeral, which wasn't a problem, but they dug grave, there was a kid lying in the grave, they were using his real name, and they were sort of having this old funeral, and there was like fake tears and stuff, and it was a bit unnerving because it's not what you see all the time. And then I could see the mum coming, and I thought, well, if I'm a bit nervy about it, she's really not going to like see her child dead with her other son breathing, say my brother, and use his real name, is dead. So it's like I nipped to see her. The intervention was with her to say it's okay, it's not extreme bullying, they are all doing it and they're just acting it out. So my intervention was with her, not with the kids, and I think that's kind of where we should be looking at our interventions rather than children. Where possible.
Very good. In my mind, extremely good. I don't know what other people think, but and we don't generally tend to call that intervention. When you think about intervening, and all the literature, this literature that I'm just putting up here now, is all about intervention with the children. Us experts, they are the people who are experiencing our expertise. So the things that, as far as I'm aware, have influenced, and people might know some other things, these are the ones that I'm aware of that have influenced what we think about interventions. And I don't know if you're all familiar with all of them. I have a dreadful memory. As I get older, it's obviously getting worse, because I've always had really bad memory, so I can't just reel. Some people can sort of reel everything off, and I can't, hence having pieces of paper here. So the range of interventions, does everybody know what the range of interventions are? Can you remember? You've done sort of bits of training and things. I'll just, there's 4 levels of intervention in these ones that become increasingly complex. There's play maintenance. The play itself contains no intervention is necessary, the worker observes, so your intervention is just looking. Simple involvement. The adult acts as a resource for play, e.g. making a tool available. Medial intervention. At the request of the child, the adult becomes involved in the play and withdraws as soon as is appropriate, e.g. initiates a particular game. Or complex intervention, there's a direct and extended overlap between playing children and the worker. The adult takes on a role in the play or acts as a partner to the playing child, e.g. takes on a character as part of the socio-dramatic. All to do with children, not being involved, being involved. Yeah? Have you all heard of those ones? Yeah. I mean, certainly as time has gone on, because these little bits of literature, I've not got them in order, but have appeared over time, and that's what trainers and educators in play work have used as the basis for their training in relation to play work. The intervention modes, sorry, I'm doing that as opposed to turning the pages on my got trigger finger. Intervention modes, do you know these ones? Bob Hughes is one that come from the first claim, or they're in the first claim, they don't come from that. Yeah, are you all, I'll just name them in case anybody isn't. Distance, perceived authentic, without preconception, unadulterating, permissional, decentered, that's the one that I didn't do. Perceived indifferent, without stereotypical play narratives, and compensatory. And they're all again connected with the child or the children, and a lot of them are about not intervening, but reasons why you shouldn't intervene or why you wouldn't intervene, having looked at the situation, reflected about it and deciding not to intervene. Then an intervention style, which is quite short: wait to be invited to play, enable play to occur uninterrupted by me, enable children to explore their own values, lead children to improve their own performance, leave the content intended play to the children, let children decide why they play, enable children to decide what is appropriate behaviour. And then finally there is something that I would class as an intervention, only organised when children want me to. All the rest of them are reasons why not to intervene, because it's a list of why you shouldn't intervene, as opposed to adulteration. That's when you kind of spoil play by, and I would say that mine was a really good example of spoiling play, the story I told to begin with. Somebody having a fantastic time that I spoil. Okay, Broad's, do you know about Broad's continuum? Yeah, which is about a range of responses. I've actually got a little diagram of it, which I'll show you in a minute if nobody knows it, but it's sort of about your internal thoughts, and whether you're like sort of in teaching mode, because you're not really playful, up to you are really playful, and because of that the children's play becomes very chaotic, and the idea is that you try to go towards the centre, you support play, and then the children will play. But I have a diagram for those of you that don't know it, which I'll show you. Manchester Circles, anyone know about those? That's about the different levels of society that intervene in children's play. I've got a diagram of that, just in case you don't know it, which I'll show you in a minute. IME, I bet lots of you know that. Yeah. That's about reflection, but reflection is what you should be doing before you intervene. Has anyone been to any of Play Wales's training? They've got a wonderful thing with yes. Stop, look, listen, reflect, react, reflect, react, reflect, react, and then practice. It's a sort of, and the reflection, I mean, is a way of reflecting on things. Intuition, memory, experience, and evidence. For any of you that I'm not aware of it. And then here's a real biggie, DEYFS, because it's kind of removing itself again now. If there's one good thing that Conservatives have done, they've lightened the amount of pressure that you're under to make children develop while they're playing. But they've had a huge impact on how people intervene into children's play. Anything else, that other things that people know of that have actually had an effect on no? Okay. So we have to think of what the purpose of intervention is. So we've had compensatory. And we're compensating for what?
Lots of space.
Lots of space. Okay. And is that we're compensating in order to respond to play or child-led needs? You know, why do we need to compensate? Why do we have to intervene to compensate for those things? The lack of space and lack of funds.
I'm just thinking of that one where the gentleman said about the, you know, that when they go home, a lot of them might be on the computers and the games. So when they come to a play space and there's no computers, so they've got to do something else and make up their play then without the computer. So is it compensating for that, giving them another option in their life?
Giving them other options. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm saying, but why are we giving them other options? What is our purpose behind? Is it because we think that with other options what's going to happen to them?
I've got a choice then, haven't I? Is it like giving them a choice of...
Okay. Has anyone ever seen that TED talk about how too much choice is really making life much more stressful? Yeah, with a lot of choice. Sometimes too much choice is making it difficult for people to make decisions, or they flip from one thing to another really quickly. They do lots of stuff that they wouldn't bother if they had virtually nothing. You know, I wonder whether internal resources are greater with less than with more.
I'm all for more.
You know, out of boredom and nothing to do have come great scientists and artists who've not had their time or space compensated for because they want to decide what to do themselves and how to be and how to play and...
Also in a way, isn't that what play spaces might try to do? To give a space where children have to decide what to do. No, there's a range of stuff. But there's no one saying, right, now's your time to do your homework, or now's your time to go and play football, or whatever. There's a range of stuff there, and that is the moment where children are having to decide what to do and how to be.
It's just having to decide what to do and how to be with a lot more stuff than they might have otherwise, if it wasn't compensated for. So, I'm not saying you're wrong.
But don't a lot of children, you know, when they've got a lot of stuff around them, make a choice, and they stick. I'm just thinking some children don't go outside in my setting; they'll stay in and play with the garage and cars, and but normally the younger children, isn't it? You know, so they would pick something and they'd be there for an hour playing with that. You know, and yet there's everything else that they could have chosen.
John, you were going to say something?
You know, try to find a balance between children being active and being non-active, being creative and just kind of fitting a box, I suppose, because, for example, the guys who are playing a computer, so they're not really active in terms of physicality, and their minds may be active, whereas then you find that balance between getting them exploring environments, creating their own play, exploring the world that they live in, and then being creative in their play, rather than when they go to school they're kind of just ticking a box in terms of government or whatever, and so I'm really being creative because they're just kind of revising and remembering in school. But if you take them in a play environment, they can be creative, they can explore, and they can kind of just thrive their own play. So it's like trying to find that balance, because playing computers isn't the worst thing, it's education isn't the worst, you know what I mean? But play is education as well as education is education in a formal sense, whereas play is more informal education.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of go along, but what I kind of have to think that if you didn't have anything, I don't know what your childhoods were like. So we all have different childhoods, don't we? So we think back to our childhood. But I don't know if any of you had a childhood without anything. And if you did, what you did in order to fill your time, and whether it wasn't just the same thing over and 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 over. It might not have been technology, but it might have been, it might have been, I don't know, I'm not saying, I didn't have a childhood without anything at all, but I can remember going through a phase of playing horses, and that was horses for at least a term, and that's all I played. Reins and a friend, and you galloped about doing horses and things, and that was, so I take your point, but on the other hand, is that not you, but us, is that not us thinking that it's better for them to have a range of things to do and not to all do the same thing because it's going to give them the opportunity to either develop or be better than they would be without.
I think sometimes these things happen accidentally. I know I was setting up some paint and stuff, just leaving it out on the stage, and they got distracted by parents, so I'd left all the paper and paint there, but I hadn't left any paintbrushes, so when I got back the kids had been really inventive and they painted, but they'd use fingers and sticks and all that sort of stuff, which was a way of them using the art that they wouldn't have done if I'd have put paintbrushes there, because they would have just taken them and used them, so that was an accident, but there's stuff like that kind of works. And with the sand pit, we don't have buckets in space, and the kids are quite inventive in what they use to try and make their sort of sandcastles and stuff by not having those stuff there. So I do kind of see that sometimes the imagination comes from not being there, but there has to be something there to do something with as well.
Well, maybe, because otherwise we would, we'd feel a bit silly, wouldn't we, really? I mean, it would be really strange to kind of go along to a room with nothing in and open it up and say, playthings. And here I am. I'm here, I'm a play worker. I know what you need. Nothing. I want to play.
But sometimes that's quite good.
Yeah.
I bet they would, exactly.
I've faced in certain situations where we've gone out with nothing, we've not taken anything with us, and then you get those situations where children that wouldn't normally play with each other because they have different interests when they're in prepared environments, suddenly they start engaging, and it'll be that word, what's that lovely word, use parts, that word.
This guy.
Yes, it's given a name. But, and then they start using things that they find rather than us providing stuff.
Yeah, because we're not always there. So like we're going to work in the community, we're only there like once a week. So I think less the better, because we can't bring these resources to them all the time. So I think them using their imagination, go there when they think and see what they can do. Because when we're gone, what they're going to be left with. So I think it's letting them use their imagination. I think less is more. So I just think that's what I think.
Good man.
I feel like that's because a lot of the work that we do is like out on the street where the kids live and where they go out to play. And the problem is that they're not getting to play and they don't know how to use the space that they've got there. So if you're bringing out equipment and sitting in front of them and then taking it away, they are totally lost in the showroom, then they go out, it's like, right, what do we do now? Like, and that tree's there, but if you get like a scooter or whatever that they're going to play with, are they going to play in the tree? No, whereas if you've not got that, then you might go and use what's there, so it means that you're not there, you know what to do, it's natural.
Because like some areas it's like a car park surrounded by high-rise flats, and what can you do in a car park? And it's just them coming out into it, because they see us there, and it's then that's like a trigger of seeing us there, like, oh, what are they doing there? And they come out to us, and then that's them just being outside, and then everything starts triggering off. It's like instance with the cars in the garages. You can't be a car, come park in the car parking space in the car park. To see everything just opens up.
So really and truly, your intervention is, I like it, is permission, isn't it? The intervention is play.
It can be done everywhere.
Because we're here, so you could just go with your red coats on and be there, and it would say, we're not going to stop you. Do.
Yeah.
Be whatever.
I think that anything ever being there is more for the parents as well, because like the kids will be outside when we're down there, so it's like making them more comfortable, making them like the kids safe, and then it's building up that relationship that the kids can go out inside without you having to step in, and then obviously they're interacting with people in a way like when you're not there, or maybe my kids can go out and play and they will be okay. So it's building up that for the parents as well, so it's a lot of time.
Another intervention with parents, which is never called intervention, but yeah, okay. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. When you play in this car park, which is surrounded by the flats, is anybody in the flat shouting down to you to be quiet? Or
no, you do sometimes get parents saying like you make a bit too much noise, but then parents are kind of embracing the whole situation. Like cars won't come into the car park when they see the kids playing, so they'll park on the side and then wait till we're finished playing, and then they'll come in. And I think the families are kind of embracing it. It's hard at first when everyone's like, oh, what are you playing around for? Like, you're grown people playing with kids. Like, it is kind of hard to try and break that down, but it is coming to a point now where families are accepting it all and they are trying to help us out, and they know that we're limited with space, and we're doing the best we can with it, and
But, I mean, safe and secure is not an intervention of children, that's an intervention of adults. The children don't care. I mean, actually, you know, who cares whether it's safe or it's, you know, it's just, yeah, okay. Good. I just put up, because I wasn't sure whether, I thought everyone would have heard of most of the things, but I didn't know about this, just the Manchester Circle. It's really just to sort of show how different things intervene into children's play life. Sort of from the, you know, politics, down to your neighbourhood, down to the family and the peers, and then down to the individual child. So it's not actually an intervention as such, but it's the things that can be seen to intervene into children's play. There was that, and then there was the same with the broad continuum that you might have seen or may not have seen, which is a sort of, you go from this didactic sort of teaching, where internally that comes from a very non-playful stance. So some people are rather like that, when even though they might consider themselves to be play workers, they nevertheless sort of like to lead things as adults. So it's very kind of teachy, and it goes down to here where you've got very playful play workers, and that's also kind of problematic, because that often then, you know, the children don't then see any boundaries whatsoever, and it can get completely out of control, which actually, maybe it would get even more out of control than it would if you weren't there, because I think that the whole thing about permission, with an adult presence, it kind of gives children permission to play, but also an adult, no matter how playful you are, unless you really just play, is also an enemy in itself. An adult is an intervention. Because if you imagine yourself out playing, or in playing, without any adults at all, which is how play, in my mind, is, the kind of play we talk about, this really chosen, intrinsically motivated, personally directed, under own control play, is the play that only happens when there are no adults around. Because the minute there's an adult, it makes a difference. But this one, the adult is behaving completely like a child, and actually the child will think there's an adult there, and therefore it could go into, you want to say something?
I was thinking that I'm part of playful play work as well, and I try to be the best play worker and be visible and stuff. But when you're almost invited into play, I've tried to leave play like quite a few times and let them carry on, but it quickly sort of breaks down. And then I have to rejoin the play again. And then I think, am I being too playful? Is it my own needs that I want the children to actually want me, and I want to feel needed, or am I actually an integral part of their play, and that they actually need me there to play? Very fine line that is.
I personally, and this is just a personal view, I think, you know, the best play workers are the ones who go and set something up and then go and sit in the office and do paperwork. And that would be considered to be the worst play worker in the world. Because I think the thing is that the best kind of play is the play that children do without any adults. That's the one where they are playing totally under their own control the minute you are there. That's not to say, as you will see from my final concluding things, that's not to say that actually you playing with them isn't a great thing to do, but I'm not entirely sure that it is the play that we're always spouting on about, the play of the freely chosen, intrinsically motivated, personally directed, under own control kind. But not to say that it's not good.
So I've been thinking quite a bit about, like, we talk about interventions and the stepping back, and then you just touched on, like, if you're an adult there where boundaries are being pushed and crossed and whatever, then you do have to make interventions that are the sort that we feel really uncomfortable about, like making the space safe and secure for children. I don't know, we've had some sort of behaviour stuff going on our playground, and it does feel like you have to step up and hold the space. You have to re-put in some of those boundaries, and you have to be quite assertive about putting them there to hold the space and make it feel safe and secure for everyone else, the other children there.
So I think there is that big chunk of stuff that play workers do that I think we tend to shy away from and skip over and feel really uncomfortable about.
Absolutely.
But we do it all the time and we have to do it. And it's
Absolutely, absolutely. It is. I'm really pleased you said it, because the point I am making is that I think that we think of ourselves as these people who sort of offer this absolute play of plays. And I think the play of plays, or whatever you want to call it, you know, the evolutionary style of things, the way that has gone on forever, is the stuff that goes on when we're not there. That's what, when we're not there. So when we are there, us as play workers, we're doing a great job, but we're not doing necessarily the thing we think we're doing. We're doing some of it. Just to finish this bit, the idea with this is that you try to head for the centre, paraludic alongside, I think it means alongside. Anyone done that? Yeah, alongside or supporting, paraludic, and then it allows it to be playful for the children. So it's a sort of little continuum. So intervention in reality. I think these people this was in 2006, they did a bit of research on this and found that in reality what the play workers had to say was that, and this is me paraphrasing it, variations in style, and it was sometimes problematic that unless you had a team of people all actually intervening or seeing intervention in the same way, it could be problematic. So if you had some people overly protected or overly structured, or too much worry about health and safety, or the views of the parents were taking control, that sometimes you couldn't intervene or not intervene in the way you wanted. And this intervention was influenced by past experience, values, attitudes, etc., hindered by clashing intervention styles and improved by team training and reflection, they said. Make sure that everybody saw intervention in the same way and that everybody did or didn't intervene in the same way. And I don't know if anyone came to this, but I did a round table about intervention quite a few years ago. Anyone come to table 23? No, we had a fantastic time. It was really, really good fun, and actually came up with true interventions that everybody did. And everyone was kind of confessing to things that they did. Some of my favourite ones were, I know the Red Myth one was where you just completely lost it. Some of them were downright dangerous. Some of them definitely contravened all known modes of intervention. But some of them were, The First Dance Is Mine was a lovely one. I like that. That was, if you don't go where I'm going to give you a kiss, actually. So there were all sorts of things that people sort of said that they did, how they intervened in reality, as opposed to the theoretical approach to it. And as you can see, we came up with 20 altogether, and that was a sort of that was everybody really thinking out of the box and thinking. And thinking, what do we actually do? We do provide all this stuff and sort of the compensatory environment, but what else do we do that might alter the whole thing? So I don't know if anyone wants to ask about any of those. I've got a piece of paper I wrote them down at the beginning.
If we wanted to look at them later, where would we find information?
There was it got written up in it, and I can't remember which. But if you were to look at table 23 interventions in it, there was a whole thing written up about them. It was quite some time ago. They were quite funny. Okay, so we really kind of get to my point. So I believe in play as a phenomena that belongs to the children who are playing, and whatever is happening is as it should be for play to fulfill its purpose. So I don't think that we have actually anything to do with it. Resonates for me is the permission, because by having somewhere you are giving the permission, whether it be an after school club, a room, or a place in the street, or a play scheme or something like that. One of the things that we really do as an intervention is to give kids permission to play, because for some children, playing, you know, is very difficult for them because of the circumstances in which they live. I think that's one of the things. And I think that children are the experts in their own play, as I've said here, and I think what's happened is that we've created an environment where interventions are likely to be required. That's the thing, because if you run somewhere and you're an adult, it's very difficult. I mean, that's why I said thank you for saying that, because there are certain things that, either because of the aims and objectives of your setting, or because of your funding, or because of EYFS, or because of something else, you are now in a position to have to intervene. You are there, and you're going to have to intervene. If those children were playing and you weren't there would be no intervention.
I'm just thinking, what's worrying me about if no one's there for play, you know, to supervise, you're going to get fatalities. People, you know, they're climbing trees, they're going near water, they're going on the roads, all this sort of thing. So if you've got, so like you're saying, children playing outside here, nothing happening, but they're on the road and you just walk past, you don't interfere at all. Next thing you know, you hear a screecher breaks and the child's dead. You know, it's something which, you know, when I'm at my setting, it's different. I've got Ofsted, I've got everybody accountable to me. You know, they're saying to me, look at what you've done to my child. Because I've had an accident where a child's broken her arm, and I said to Ofsted it was just an accident. Massive inquiry, came down to find out why. I was inspected again. So, you know, we have all sorts of regulations and everything.
If you weren't there, though, the thing about it is that it sounds dreadful, because I sound as if I'm trying to say there shouldn't be play work, but it is not the case at all. I'm getting you to think about your interventions. But if you weren't there, then you wouldn't be responsible. You know, if children are playing, if children go out and play. I mean, I don't know how many of you, when you were little, when you were younger than you are now, when you were children, I don't know how many of you just went out to play, either out in the street or out in the garden or out in the yard, you know, just went out to play. Certainly my memory, which I think I'm probably the oldest person here, and certainly I just used to go out to play. And I mean, and there was no intervention. The only thing that ever happened is if anything happened, I would go back and find my mum or a neighbour or something. You know, so nobody intervened into my play. I went and intervened into their life if something happened. Either if somebody was bullying me, or if, nobody bullied me. Or if I got hurt, or, you know, or if I needed a prop of some sort. So if I kind of wanted to make a den and I thought I needed my mum's photo, I would go and ask for it. It's, you know, sort of that kind of thing. So by you know, so there wasn't an intervention, so nobody responsible. And I have to say that we live in very privileged circumstances, don't we? Because if you go to other parts of the world and you'll see, I don't know, you know, go to Vietnam and you see children 1, 2, 3 playing alongside the road. They learn, you know, streetwise, don't they? They don't get run over because they're responsible for themselves, or their brothers and sisters are responsible for them. I'm not saying that's right. This is the thing, but actually, and they do grow up to be people who've not been offered any play settings.
But some of them have been run over.
Yeah, well, of course they have. People have died all their lives. You know, children do die, don't they? That sounds harsh. That sounds dreadful.
Children play chicken on the road on their bike. Main road, and children actually at the gate.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want it to happen. You don't want it to happen.
No, you don't want that.
See, the problem we have is, like, often we'll show up to our street play sites and there'll be no kids there at all until we arrive and the kids then come out.
Yeah.
So what we do is we promote and we encourage the life skills. So when we leave, they have the life skills equipped for them to survive on the streets, if you like. And then eventually we'll phase out of just try to get the kids to retake and re-own their own natural environments and their own streets and stuff. So when we leave, they're equipped, I feel like, with skills required.
so they can, will no longer be that intervention, if you like.
Yeah,
Preventing them with
it's
different-
intervention and then removing it and then removing yourself, but it's not possible in all settings.
See, kind of my thought on, like, I know you're saying, like, about accidents and people falling and whatever, but adults fall as well. An adult could walk out the road and get hit by a car, adult could fall and break their leg. I think you could put as much padding on equipment, blah, 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 but as a child could be walking along and trip over their own foot and break off.
It's what I said about how you view children. That's the thing. If you think that they are capable of, isn't it? It's, you know, if you think they're capable, obviously not really young children, but I mean children are much smarter than we think they are, and also, you know, should we be responsible for all aspects of their well-being and play? Is play not their territory? You know, isn't it that what they do, and even if it appears to be stuff that we as adults don't necessarily think of as being what is necessarily how they should be and what they should be doing and all the rest of it, shouldn't we leave them to it?
I believe that, like, when you asked about the computer skills and everything in this room, I believe that a child who came in here probably more equipped these days to start engineers and
Yes.
and if they can do that, then how can they not play in their own street without the intervention of us?
Good man.
Isn't it chicken and egg though? Because it's like, you know, we've made these environments that make it more likely that we're going to have to be. But isn't that because families are not so keen on just letting their kids out to play?
Indeed.
So actually, all the settings are actually there to reassure, or you know, we're there to reassure families that it's like it's safe here to.
I totally,
let them play.
I totally, you know, totally. I'm going. I've seen it's only 10 minutes and we haven't even got to where I thought you were going to do something. But never mind. I agree. We've intervened, and by intervening, by providing places for the children to play, we put ourselves in the position of having to intervene. That's the way it is, and that is fine. And in many ways good.
That they might, it's not like they could be, it's not like we've pulled them in off the street, they were all playing on the street without adults, and we've pulled them into our setting so we can intervene. Like they weren't out. Like,
No, but you don't know what they were doing, sorry, I'm bleeping in.
Yeah.
But you don't know what they were doing before they came in. I mean, you know, we make the assumptions, don't we? We're going back to the needy child. I mean, you hear, not you, but you do hear lots of play workers just saying, oh, you know, the sort of children are being deprived of play and all the rest of it. But actually what I think they mean is they're not visible. They're not as visible as they used to be because it's a much more dangerous environment. But I suspect that if you went into their homes, right, that you would find that they probably are playing. They may not be playing in the same way as they used to play, but is that not to do with evolution? Is our environment not different, and isn't society different, and therefore play is going to be... I'm just going to move on a bit, because I can't sing, unfortunately, but I put play workers in you know that wonderful song, and I can't sing it, you know. Yes, some of the great interveners. Just, you know, it's a conundrum, really. You know, sort of. I mean, are we play experts who are providing for them? You know, are we? What exactly are we in relation to intervention? I suppose I'm asking. And I didn't put as play work as permission, but I really like the notion of it, and I think actually you're talking about play work as permission as well, because it's the sort of saying, you know, look, that you can play here if you want to, you know, and the idea of reclaiming a bit of the public realm is a particularly good idea. I concern myself that you know, that sometimes we intervene particularly in relation to health and safety. At times when it would be better not to, simply because, you know, at some point children have to learn to be responsible for themselves, and I think the sooner the better, frankly, because otherwise they learn to rely on us, and that's the problem with being an adult. the thing you were saying about when you stop playing, they want you to play again. I mean, that's exactly the same. I have grandchildren and I love playing with them, but I play with them for me, not for them. Right? So this is me, and I'm quite happy to do that because I'm not being a play worker, I'm being a granny, and I think one of my great privileges is playing with my grandchildren. If they want me to play, they'll come and ask me, and then I'll play with them. But I try not to just sort of play with them all the time, because otherwise they just want me all the time, and I only want to play when I want to play, not when, not when they want me to play. Okay, so the sort of lightly dudded my 3 questions as I was going to ask is, how can we be absent when we are present? That sounds like death, actually, the absence of present. And if we're present and we intervene, should it only be at what Tony Delahouy describes as the tipping point, when play has gone into non-play, and how do we know when that is anyway? You know, because as play experts, do we know when play has ceased to be play? Because it depends on what you think of as being play, because it may be play, it may not be play, and how on earth can we ever tell, right? And my main point, I suppose, is should we try to stop pretending that we're offering free play and talk about adult-supported play, which I put, which is okay, but it's different. So if you talk about adult-supported play, then actually all interventions are on. Because then you are admitting to the fact that you are an adult in this setting, you are going to have to intervene, you are intervening in the first place, you have provided the setting, right? You know, you are the setting.
Sounds horrible, doesn't it?
And maybe you could call it something else, and maybe it is play work, but we ought to change what we see as being this really chosen, intrinsically motivated, personally directed and under own control, because actually it's not when you're there, because you are controlling it by what you put in your setting, the parameters that you draw in your setting.